Yeah, it should have been G.
E and then, I mean, C, F, C. So you got it right there. C. That's probably me. It's probably me.
There it is. Morning. I lost one of my bookmarks. I guess that's from Sunday night. Hope everybody's had a good week. These weeks are great. These weeks are kind of hard. First of all, I want to say Happy Mother's Day to anybody here online, and Happy Mother's Day to the dads that have to pick up the slack and go both ways. That's with all parents. How much that you're appreciated. Maybe not at the time, because there comes a time in all of our kids' lives when we're the dumbest animals to ever take a breath, and they always know better than we do. I think we were like that maybe, but I do appreciate the parents that God gave me. He knew exactly who he needed to place me with. He knew exactly the disciplinarians I would need. He knew exactly the instruction that I would need. He knows what we need. And I definitely appreciate that, because this time of year, it's a great celebration of moms. It's a great celebration of the young people that you guys have brought into this world or raised up. It's a great celebration for us kids to be able to celebrate our moms, and for Father's Day too, our dads. But sometimes we get in our feelings this time of year. It becomes more of a time of remembering, reminiscing. Somehow old memories and photos pop up. If you've got family on social media, they are bound and determined to post a picture that you're not expecting. And as soon as you open up your browser, boom, there it is. Kind of catches you off guard, kind of catches you by surprise. Sometimes you get a phone call out of the blue, just thinking about you today, and those are nice. But we, in our thoughts and our thought process, sometimes we get caught up in those thoughts. So along with the struggles, personal struggles that I've had recently, in my mind, I also have personal struggles with my family in this time of year too. Of course, we lost Mom back in 2001. Lost my grandmother more recently, and my Aunt Carolyn posted a picture of Granny Stockton the other day, and that was a really nice surprise. I hadn't seen a picture of Granny Stockton in a long, long time. And one of the best, feistiest ladies I ever knew. Again, God knew which family that I needed to grow up with. And I really appreciate that. But something that I've been studying kind of in the background, and some of my thoughts was God's thoughts are not my thoughts. God's thoughts are not my thoughts. And if you would, let's take our Bibles and turn to Isaiah chapter 55. Isaiah chapter 55. And we're going to look at verses 8 and 9 to start out with. Again, I appreciate all the ladies. I appreciate ladies that have been figures in my life my entire life. I'm sorry I missed Christy. I wanted to sneak by here and just say hi, but I didn't get a chance to yesterday. I hope she's doing good. And when you see her, please tell her I asked about her, because I would have really liked to have seen her. Isaiah chapter 55, verses 8 and 9. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. So my thoughts are not God's thoughts. As much as we strive to be Christ-like, as much as we strive to do the right thing in our lives, our thoughts are not God's thoughts. He's got a different agenda than we do. And sometimes it's hard for us to imagine, understand, know what God might be thinking in a certain situation in our life, because it is that much bigger than our small thought process. And I, without offending or anything, my feeble mind sometimes just cannot grasp the big picture like God can. He's got this whole thing planned out. He's got this whole thing. He's got this whole thing that he understands, and I don't. I mean, it really lets me know just how feeble, just how simple-minded I am, because, we're the most intelligent life form on earth, right? Probably not, really. But we're the most intelligent life form. We should understand these things. We should be able to plan. We should be able to respond. We should be able to put the right foot first forward every single time, but we continue to make mistakes. We continue not to understand. And we continue to question and doubt as part of our nature. So God's thoughts are not our thoughts. He has a plan. We have an idea that we're right, but what we really need is God's perspective on things. And I had a couple of notes here on God's perspective. My first thought, the way up is down. Let's turn to Mark chapter 10. And this is jumping around just a little bit. Mark chapter 10. Mark chapter 10, verse 42. And of course I didn't mark it. And we'll just start with verse 41. Mark chapter 10, verse 41. And when the 10 heard it, they began to be much displeased with James and John. But Jesus called them to him and saith unto them, here it is in red letters, You know that they which are accounted to rule over the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and their great ones exercise authority upon them. But so shall it not be among you. But whosoever will be great among you shall be your minister, and whosoever of you will be the chiefest shall be the servant of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister, and to give his life for ransom for many. See, the best preparation for leadership is service. There's nothing else that's going to prepare us, you, them, whoever wants to be in leadership. There's nothing better to prepare anyone for leadership than actual service. It's very hard to follow somebody that has no idea what you're doing. It's very hard to follow instruction from somebody that's never been willing to do it themselves. James and John wanted to be the highest positions in Jesus' kingdom. But Jesus told them that true greatness comes from serving others. Peter, one of the disciples who heard this message, expands on his thought in 1 Peter chapter 5. And you don't have to turn there, but I am. Well, if I can find it. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 1. The elders which are among you I exhort, who am I also an elder, and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, and also a partaker of the glory that shall be revealed. Feed the flock of God which is among you, taking oversight thereof, not by constraint, but willingly, not for filthy lucre, but of ready mind, neither as being lords over God's heritage, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd shall appear, ye shall receive a crown of glory that fadeth not away. Likewise, ye younger, submit yourselves unto the elder. Yea, all of you be subject to one another, and be clothed in humility. For God resisteth the proud, and giveth grace to the humble. So humble yourselves therefore under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. Peter, one of Jesus' 12 disciples, was one of three who saw Christ's glory at the transfiguration. Often spokesman for the apostles, he witnessed Jesus' death and resurrection, preached at the Pentecost, and became a pillar of the Jerusalem church. But writing to the elders, he identifies himself as a fellow elder. All these things that Peter witnessed done had to do with, knowledge of, was very superior to some of the others, but he still acknowledged himself as one of. A fellow leader, not a superior. He asked them to feed the flock of God, exactly what Jesus had told him to do back in John. Peter was taking his own advice as he worked along with other elders in caring for God's faithful people. His identification with elders is a powerful example of Christian leadership where authority is based on service, not power. You know, I think about the things that God's done for me and the free will that he's given each one of us. It's like God didn't audibly tell me, but he told me he wants me to love him because I want to. That's a choice that we make, not because he said so. Now, he has the power to bring life, to take it. He has the power over everything. He's that much superior. He sent his son down here to die for each and every one of us, and he knows the pain, the fear, the anger, every emotion that we have. He knows these things. Jesus experienced these things. God's not only over me, but the things he's provided for me, the things that he's helped me with, not just putting his thumb down on me and imposing his will. It's almost a level of service that he's provided to us. He's given us things that we just don't deserve. He's given us a level of service that we just haven't earned. And the greatest example of leadership is someone that's willing to serve. Just like sending his son down here on this earth to make a way for us to be with him forever in heaven. Jesus didn't come here to be set up on a pedestal, and Jesus experienced our life. He experienced it. And there's a huge difference, and I said this a couple of weeks ago when I got back from my trip. There's a huge difference between being a citizen and a subject. There's a huge difference. When you walk across the courtyard, when you walk across the little, I don't even remember what they called it now. When you walk across the meadow there with all the trees, the park, and you see all the wrought iron fences and the dark colors, and you know it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong, it's clean, it's exact, It has a level of pageantry to it, but when you walk across the field there, you see the dark, drab, mundane, day-to-day everything in some places here on earth. I'm not going to call anybody out, but in some places here on earth. And then when you get to the palace and you turn around and look out, you see all the gold and the tulip yards and the beauty and the pageantry. And you know, you get two different perspectives there. God's promised me beauty in heaven. God's promised me to be part of that. God's promised not the wrought iron, not the mundane, not the drab. God's promised me the best. God didn't promise us the pageantry. God promised us the citizenship, not the subjects. He didn't promise us to be subjects. He promised us to be citizens. And there's a huge difference in that. I've learned that difference in the past few weeks. And on travel and seeing the way different people do things and seeing that, God promised us that beauty to be part of, not to just provide for somebody else. He's offered us a level of service that can't be matched by anything else. And the greatest example of leadership, Jesus Christ himself served others. The greatest example of leadership. So why do we as humans, I mean, we get rewarded in the corporate world. We get rewarded in the public sector by our achievements. How much money you make? What's your financial status? What's your title? That's a big one. What's your title? You know, I've made up a lot of titles to go on business cards over the years that probably weren't legit. You know, senior transportation engineer. I don't have a degree. I don't have my degree. Custodial engineer. I've done janitor work. I mean, we make up all these names to make it sound better on a resume. It's a status thing. But the truth of the matter is, I'll never make a decent leader until I learn to serve better. Unless I've experienced it, unless I've swept the floors, I can never ask somebody to sweep the floor. Unless I've fixed food in the kitchen, I could never ask anybody to volunteer for the kitchen. And I've asked plenty of people to drive a bus, and I'm doing that right now, so I'm paying my time for that. That's another plug with anybody that might be led to drive a church bus, by the way. I can't expect to be a leader unless I experience it myself. I can't expect to ask anybody to do anything I wouldn't be willing to do myself. That's a tough pill to swallow sometimes. Peter describes several characteristics of good leaders in the church. They realize they're caring for God's flock, not their own. They lead out of eagerness to serve, not out of obligation. That's a big one. Eagerness to serve, not out of obligation. They are concerned for what they can give, not for what they can get. This job doesn't pay much here. Not take it back, it does too when you think about it. Money-wise, no. It's not a career choice if you like me and you like to eat. But the looks on the faces of these young people, being the youth leader here at Emory Heights. When a kid gets it, you can't put a price on that. When a kid gets it, when anybody gets it, when a young person gets it and asks Christ into their life, I think what we'll find tonight, Brother Tweed had put some notes together. I think we've had 4 or 5 young people saved in Awana in 2019. And that's amazing that God lets us see that and feel that and experience that. My reward's not here on this earth, but God gives us a little glimpse of it from time to time, little flashes of it from time to time. And one to keep us humble and the other to keep us encouraged and another to keep us strong, and another to keep fighting hard. He knows it. He sees it. He acknowledges it. But the reason we do it is not for what we can get, but the reason we do it is what we can give. He gave it all for me. Why can't I do the same? He gave it all. Jesus laid it down and gave it up for me. What's a few hours a week? Driving a bus. Putting up with 60 or 70 screaming kids. What do we really sacrifice? We don't. To give just a little when he gave it all. They lead by example, not by force. Lead by example, not by force. Not because I said so. Seen a picture, somebody posted it one time about a good leader. And they had a picture of a guy sitting up on a wooden block with slaves pulling at him with a whip. That's not a leader. The good picture of the leader was him with the front of the rope helping his people pull that stone. Leading the way. Not pushing the way, leading the way. Lead by example, not by force. All of us are leaders in some way. Whatever your role, our leadership should be in line with these characteristics. The best preparation for leadership is service. Another thought that I had, death of his saints is precious. We sometimes think differently than God does on a lot of things. Sometimes I am a little selfish. I know you find that hard to believe, but I'm selfish. The death of his saints is precious. Let's turn to the book of Psalms 116. Psalms 116. You would think I'd have marked this, but I didn't. Psalms 116, verse 15. All that work for this one verse. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. As phenomenal as that verse is, as powerful as that verse is, a lot of commentators are really scattered about that verse. And I'm looking at it from the point of view as God thinks differently than me. The death of his saints, the memories that we have, the things that we have in our heart, the things that grab us, and me being selfish. I remember growing up, a bunch of older people that sat right on the front rows right next door. I remember growing up, the Ishams that lived down at the crossroads. And I don't remember the man's first name. They were amazing, amazing older folks to me. But he would laugh at me and let me walk if it wasn't raining. But if he caught me walking to church in the rain, he would always stop and make me get in the car. It wasn't really a, would you like a ride? It was like, get in the car. And he would bring me up here to church as a little boy. And I don't know that much else about them. But they really had a concern that I made it to church and I didn't let a little bit of rain stop me from going to church. Because I just walk up the crossroads. If it started raining, sometimes, it's easy to turn around and go back to the house. What was it? It takes 60 gallons of water to baptize a Christian and 6 drops to keep them from going to church. Yeah. Okay. Guilty, especially when I was walking. It's not fun to walk in rain. Most times. But I miss them. I miss these saints of God that have passed on before us. I miss them. And if you think hard enough about it, would you want them back? The answer is probably no, because you know where they're at. And we're selfish. I was angry when God brought my mom and dad home. I was mad. I needed them. I need them now. And our emotions let us get the best of us because we want them. Knowing someday we'll be reunited with them because we have that hope. I don't understand how somebody that's not saved can handle that kind of pressure on their mind and on their body and on their heart. I don't understand. Those people who don't have hope, I don't understand how they can handle that. Because I have that hope. I know one day it's not a separation forever for us. I know one day we'll see them again. Because I have that hope. I really pity someone who doesn't have that. That their thought process is, well, they're just gone forever. No, they're not. They're not. We will see our loved ones again. But it's hard not to hurt. It's hard not to react. It's hard not to be angry. It's really hard not to just walk away. But God's love is the only thing that gets me through days like today. God's love is the only thing that gets me through birthdays or times when you would just love just to pick up the phone. God's love is the only thing that gets me through that time. God stays close to us even in death. When someone we love is nearing death, we may become angry, feel abandoned, but believers are precious to God. He carefully chooses the time when they're to be called into His presence. Let this truth provide comfort when you've lost a loved one. God notices each life is valuable to Him. Every single life is valuable to Him. And if your name's written in that Lamb's Book of Life, there's a time by your name. There's a time for us to come home. And a lot of folks are worried about the rapture. Well, what happens with the rapture? Hey, bring it on. Come on, what are you threatening me with? Bring it on. A lot of people worried about the rapture. We're running out of time. And that's true. I believe that's true. But each one of us as individuals are running on a time clock too. We all have a certain amount of time. And we're not promised tomorrow. And with that being said, is there somebody else we need to call today, stop by and visit today, pat on the back today, shake their hand today, give them a hug today? Is there somebody that we need to just smile at today? That one, and I tell some of my young people, I was with the teenagers not too long ago, and I told them again, I believe with everything in me, when God is done with me, when He's allowed me to witness to the last person, when He's allowed me to say that last thing, when He's allowed me to pick up that last kid, it'll be my time and He'll take me home. And I'm good with that. But don't waste the time that we have here. Service, love. It's all about love. It all comes down to love. Love, charity, service, everything that Jesus taught us while He was here. Everything that God's Word teaches us to love each other. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Love. He loves us. And His love will sustain us. His love will strengthen us. His love will get us through days that we just can't imagine. He has me so far. Other people have experienced loss that I cannot understand. I have friends right now that are experiencing a loss in their family that I just cannot fathom. I don't know what they're going through. I don't know what they feel. The only thing I can encourage them is God's love will get you through this. God's love will sustain you. I think we got enough time to get this one started. God's priority is fellowship through a greater revelation of Himself. His priority is having a greater fellowship with each one of us. Because we assign a lot of priorities to God, don't we? We assign a lot of things to God, like he needs to fix this, right? He shouldn't let this happen. Really? We're up here thinking that we should be able to think that God shouldn't let things happen. He has a plan. He's in control. He's always had a plan. He's always been in control. God's priority is not that you feel better or even that we get healed. That's not, I don't feel like that's the true priority of God, is that you feel just peachy and everything's just great, or that certain aspects in our life we get healed. His priority is that we grow closer to Him as He reveals Himself to us. His priority is that we lean on Him more. So I'll go back to the statement, yes, God will give you more than you can handle on your own. And the reason for that is so you lean on Him harder. You trust Him more. You let Him love you. Simple concept, really hard to do. Lay your burdens at the foot of the cross. Yeah, I can do that. No, it's been hard my whole life. It's been hard to go lay it at the foot of the cross and walk away and never look back, never think about that. Never, oh, I can do that. I got this. No, you don't. His priority is that you grow closer to Him as He reveals Himself to you. Let's look at the book of Job. We've addressed the book of Job a couple of times. Let's go back and look at Job again. And I'll get through this part. Job chapter 1. Job chapter 1, verse 6 through 8. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, Doth Job fear God for naught? He knew exactly who Job was, didn't he? Yeah, you mean that one that you got your hands around, you've been protecting? Yeah, I know exactly who he is. My point is, the devil knows your sins and he knows your name. God's love, God's trust in us, and our trust in Him more so is what's going to pull us through. God's priority is fellowship through a greater revelation of Himself. So now, Job chapter 1, let's look at verse 21. And said, Naked I came out of my mother's womb, and naked I shall return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Satan's looking for prey, and God suggests Job. Verse 21 says God takes away, but at the end, God gives Job all of his stuff back and doubles it. Trust in God, love of God, the things that God has revealed. And we can go to Job chapter 42, but you don't have to turn there, I'll just read it. So Eliphaz the Temanite and Bildad the Shuhite, Zophar the Naamathite went and did according as the Lord had commanded them. The Lord also accepted Job. And the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. All this time, now we're in chapter 42, the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then came there unto him all his brethren and all his sisters and all that had been of his acquaintance before, and did eat bread with him in his house. And they bemoaned him and comforted him over all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. Every man also gave him a piece of money, and every one an earring of gold. So the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning, for he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, and 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 she-asses. And he had also 7 sons and 3 daughters. He called the name of the first Jemina, the name of the second Kiza, and the name of the third Karen Hapach. In all the land were no women found as fair as the daughters of Job, and the father gave them inheritance among their brethren. After this lived Job 140 years, and saw his sons and his sons' sons, even 4 generations. So Job died, being old and full of days. But God always had the power to restore Job and his stuff. He always had the power. But the point of the ultimate of all this drama was chapter 42, verse 5. Chapter 42, verse 5. I have heard of thee by the hearing of the ear, but now mine eye seeth thee. God revealed more of himself to Job. Not just what he had heard, not just what he had felt, but through Job's trials, tribulations, pain, anguish, all the people that have turned on Job, all the people that said, you must have sinned, why don't you just say so? Just tell us what it was. Didn't believe him. They had their own thought process that God would not allow this to happen to you unless you've done something. They were wrong. God doesn't think like we do. God used this period in Job's life to reveal more of himself to Job. Job trusted God. Job loved God, and God loved him. And God took that time to instruct and to build and to bring Job back and restore him. Twofold restored him. Through his trials, God revealed more of himself to Job. If everything went great in our lives, would we be really searching for something more in God? If everything always was roses, dandelions, roses, everything's great, had plenty of money, never struggled, never wondered what it was like to struggle to make a payment, would we, through our trials, through our challenges, through our struggles, God can reveal more of himself to us. Through all my pain and anger, I wouldn't want to bring mom and dad back. I know where they're at, and I'll see them again someday. Through all the struggles and trials and pain that we've had to endure, the only one that's constant was God. He's always there for us. And just because I think a certain way that maybe God should do this or maybe God should do that, no, God's going to do what God does because he has a plan, and it's bigger than me. May God use my life for part of his plan. That's an honor. And may he make me a better leader through service. That's an honor. And may he take the things in my life and be examples for somebody else. That's an honor. So when I prayed to God that if he'd open doors, I'd walk through them, and to please just use me, and please just take my family, and please just take my son and use him for your glory, and take my daughter and her family and use them for your glory. He's letting me see some of that now. Because his thoughts are so much bigger than my thoughts. Any questions or comments? We've got a couple more that I'd like to cover. Talking about surrendering, weakness through strength, and another few thoughts that God has differently than me. So if there's no questions or comments, thanks for listening. Welcome back to Emory Heights today. Welcome for Mother's Day Sunday. I love you guys, and I appreciate you guys. Thanks.